What's up, everybody? So I'm going to go through some of the features that GoBoard has for physics tutoring. Now, a lot of these features do not have to be used solely for physics. They could be cross-course or cross-subject features. However, they do help me whenever we're doing physics tutoring, so I'm going to run through them here really quickly. Okay, so actually I want to talk about two things first before we get into some of the features, and that is, you'll notice the URL for the GoBoard here can be named whatever you want. So I like to name the URLs either that have to do with maybe the student's last name or the subject that they're in. I think it just gives it kind of a personal touch. So I've decided to label this GoBoard room goboard.com/physic. Now I couldn't put the S on the end of there because GoBoard only allows 6 characters for a room ID. It could be a mixture of numbers and letters, but it has to be 6 characters. But you can customize that, so you can change that to whatever you want if you want it to reflect the course that you're working in, maybe even the subject material that you're working on, or perhaps part of the student's name or something. Just gives it a little bit more personalized feel whenever you send them the link. The second thing I want to talk about is you'll notice here on the outline, there's a dotted line that kind of goes around the board's little zigzag over here. That dotted line displays the other person's in the room screen. Now, if there's multiple people in the room, it's going to display the smallest screen size. And the reason for that is I have another object in the room. I have my iPad in the room with me. So if that were another student in the room, they're going to have a smaller screen than me. So if I just go and start writing all over this GoBoard, they may not see the entire thing because their screen is smaller than mine. So what this dotted line allows you to do is see exactly where the other student's screen ends. So therefore, if you were to go and draw something, if you were drawing this squiggly line and you started drawing it off of the dotted line there or off of the dotted area, they're only going to be able to see this part inside the dotted area. They're not going to be able to see the part on the outside there. So that's just something to remember whenever you're working with another student or even multiple students. The dotted line automatically goes to the smallest screen. So as long as you stay within that dotted line, everybody, whoever you're working with, is going to be able to see the material. Okay, now I'm going to run through really quickly some of the basic features that we have on GoBoard and then a few more physics-specific ones. So what you'll notice here is obviously you're able to write on the GoBoard. You can write things, you can erase things, you can use lines. There's a couple different ways to do it. So I have a mouse here. If you're working with the computer and you have a mouse, you can right click and that brings up this quick little kind of like a pie chart there that has all of the different main tools that you're going to need. So we can go to the pen, we can write some things with the pen, we can then erase them. You can draw lines on the GoBoard. Now, lines are very beneficial to me whenever I'm doing physics because instead of drawing a line, I'll actually go over to the bottom right here and change this to an arrow, and that's how I can draw free body diagrams with forces. So if we wanted to do a box and show maybe the force of gravity and the normal force or something, we could click to the right. We would go to shapes. If we scroll over line and we keep going to the outer part of that pie chart, you can get to shapes. We could then draw a box here. We draw our box, and then we could use the arrow tool to draw the forces acting on that box. So we could go back to lines, back to arrows, and we could even customize the colors. So we could have green for gravity, and that's going to be acting down, and then maybe blue for the normal force, and that's going to be acting up. Maybe even yellow if we had a frictional force in here, and that's going to be acting to the other side. So the arrows is a nice way, at least in physics, to represent forces. Just a real quick, easy way for you to show some forces on there without having to draw them. Now you can always draw things on the GoBoard too. So if you have an iPad or if you have a touchscreen computer, you can draw things as well. So if I go on my iPad here, I can scribble around and I can draw on my iPad and it shows up in the GoBoard. So I could do the same thing. I could draw some forces on here, call this T cosine theta, and the theta is measured off the horizontal there. You can do whatever you want. You can draw or you can use a mouse or the trackpad on your computer. Whatever you want, it's going to work all the same. Okay, now that's a lot of the basic features. Again, you can get to those by clicking the basic tools button or by right-clicking if you have a mouse. A couple other features here, you can undo things if you made something that you didn't want to do and you don't want to go back and try to erase everything. Just click the undo, and then you can also type in text. So if you didn't like your handwriting or something, we could also type in here, T cosine, and then how am I going to type theta? Well, we already got that figured out for you. There is a theta button down here. Whoops, it just went away. So we can click the theta there, and then it's going to auto-populate with some of those important Greek characters. Okay, so that is a quick rundown on the basic tools. Let's talk about some of the more specific tools that we can use for physics here. So now I'm going to actually click on the More Tools button. The More Tools button on the right brings up a big option here. So if we click on the Physics tab, there's a couple different tools that we can use. The first big one that I'll use often is the equation editor. If you click on the equation editor, it allows you to enter an equation in the form of LaTeX on the left, and then it will autofill it into the board whenever you click add equation to the board. So let's say we're doing the force of friction for something. So we want the force of friction, and that's equal to the coefficient of friction mu times the normal force, mu Fn. Now, if I didn't want to write that out, or if I didn't have a touchscreen computer, we can use this equation editor, type it in, and click add equation to the board, and then it populates it right in there. If we don't like where it is, of course, we can just drag it and move it around. And if you don't know how to write in LaTeX, that's totally okay, because you can use some of the automatically populated stuff in there. So if we go back to the equation editor, we could automatically use fractions, and we can automatically put that in there. That way we don't have to worry about knowing LaTeX. So we could say the fraction of the force of gravity, mg, divided by mu, and it's going to populate everything in there. Again, add equation to board, and we're good to go. We can plug in whatever we need. All right, so that goes over the equation editor. A couple other things that we have in physics: Wolfram alpha. If you just want to search something on Wolfram alpha, or you want to know how to solve an integral, you know all the capabilities of Wolfram alpha, you can go ahead and use that. The other options here are, you can add in an image or a file. So if you want to add in an image from the web, maybe you want to get something that looks like an inclined plane or a rope or something, you can add those in from the web. You can also insert your own PDF from either your computer by clicking this button, or if you have a PDF on your phone, or if you take a picture of something with your phone, you can insert it by just texting it to this number. If you text an image to that number, it's going to automatically populate it in the board. Usually takes about 15 or 20 seconds though, depending on your internet. And it will automatically pop right into the board here, and then you're good to go. You don't even have to do anything on your computer. So that's a very handy option if you need to take a picture of something and you don't want to try to get the phone from your computer or from your phone to your computer and so on. Just text it into the board right there. Now, one other tool that I do find helpful that's technically not under the physics tab here, if we just go back to the general tab, is the graphing calculator tool. The graphing calculator tool runs through Desmos, and that's helpful if we're ever trying to visualize any equations. So for physics and stuff, we do a lot of parabolic motion or projectile motion. So maybe we would have an equation that looks like negative x squared plus 16. And we wanted to basically visualize the parabolic motion of this object. We were told it followed this path. We could insert that graph. It's going to go ahead and save this image and then throw it right into the GoBoard where we can easily see visually exactly what that motion would look like. So that's a lot of the big tools that we'll use in GoBoard. If we scan back through the more tools here, we see a lot of other ones. Again, you can import, export files. There's a calculator. If you wanted to change the background grid, you could change that. Maybe you don't like the black color on the background, you could make it green, or you could make it white. You can even change the style of the grid. So if you don't like the grid, take it off. If you want a bigger grid, you can make it like that. It's fully customizable to exactly what you like or exactly what your student likes. A couple of the other tools here, again, we talked about you can send in a photo or a file. There's some keyboard shortcuts here that will teach you a few tips and tricks on how to master those keyboard shortcuts. There's a text chat if you just want to chat with the student or any other students in the GoBoard. There's a timer. That's definitely beneficial when you're doing practice problems. I always like to practice like you play. So when you're doing practice problems, I like to do them with the amount of time you'd have on an exam. So you can use that timer feature to give your students exactly the amount of time they'd have on an exam to put a little bit of pressure on them and help prepare them for the exam. You can also go to full screen if you want to. If your connection's getting bad, you can reset your connection. You can export or print the GoBoard so you can have that as a PDF forever. And then lastly, you can definitely email us ever with comments or ideas. If you ever have any comments or ideas, click on this tab and then you can get whatever, or you can give us some feedback on how we're doing. If there's a feature you want to see built, let us know. We'll definitely get working on it. So I think that's most of the big tools that I use for physics. Some of those are physics specific. A couple of them can just be generic for any class, but hopefully that helps you out on your physics tutoring.